Greetings, St. Paul, in the name of the Most High, and in the name of the ancestors who went to the mountaintop and saw the promised land. Amen. I want to start by giving out a shout in the names of the living legends who came down from the mountaintop with the book of the rules and the roadmap. I want to start today with a greeting from James Baldwin to Chinua Achebe, the very first time and the only time that they met in 1980 in Florida. James Baldwin told Achebe, as Pastor Orr told us, that he was meeting a brother he had not seen in 400 years. And while the audience clapped, they missed the second part of the greeting, which is to say that it is a miracle that we are meeting again, because when they took our ancestors away in chains, through the doors that they marked, doors of no return, they never intended that we would survive to meet again. That's right. That's right. I also stand before you as a miracle because, as a child, I survived a genocidal war in which 3 million people were killed in 30 months. It was never intended that I would survive to stand before you. But as Bob Marley would say, we are survivors. We are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Burning in the fire, but we never get burned. I feel humbled as a layman to be invited to speak in a congregation such as the African Methodist Episcopal Church, a prophetic tradition in Christianity started while our people were still in chains. When the name African was something to be ashamed of because it was pejorative. And yet, Bishop Allen insisted on keeping the name African as the name of this congregation. That's right. It is prophetic because after all those years of denigrating people of African descent, scientists have come to the conclusion that every human being is a person of African descent. That's right. And so when Reverend Allen started this congregation, he didn't intend it to be only for people who are African American, but for all of God's children who are all children of Africa. As the Reverend told us, I was privileged and blessed to be tutored by priests as a child, by an African spiritual priest, my father, and by Roman Catholic fathers in the Catholic Church. But today, what I want to talk to you about is something I mentioned earlier, the miracle of survival. And in addition to that miracle of survival is the miracle of mercy and forgiveness. The Igbo of Nigeria who suffered the genocide in Biafra, in which 3 million people were killed in 30 months, have not borne a grudge or have not obsessed about seeking a revenge for the killing of their kith and kin. The Igbo appear to have forgiven those who ganged up against them with foreign assistance to kill so many of our own people. I think there is a lesson there for us, because forgiveness is not very common. And even those who forgive say that there are certain things that are unforgivable. So, do you think the Igbo should regard the Biafra genocide as unforgivable? Or do you think we are being children of the true God by forgiving even the unforgivable? I chose the topic of forgiveness after some reflection because, to be honest, when Reverend O asked me to come speak to this congregation, I had no idea what to say. But I must have been inspired to pick the topic of forgiveness because I believe it is a tradition that runs through people of African descent more than any other group today. If you remember the war in Liberia, there was a lot of killing. At that time, Alpha Blondy, the West African singer, sang that we are calling on Jesus Christ to save us. We are calling on Allah to save us. Perhaps because the people doing the killings, we are Christians. The people doing the killings, we are Muslims. It was the same case in Biafra. The people who killed 3 million of us were very religious people. But it is not strange that people of African descent are forgiving people. Remember when Richard Allen started the church? It was started because people of African descent were not allowed to fellowship in equality within the existing denominations. Right. And yet, even before he started the church, he dedicated himself to treating people who had yellow fever in Philadelphia. And he did not say that he was going to treat only people who had black skin or people we call African Americans today. He attended to all of God's children, irrespective of skin color. Yeah. And so when he started the church, he said that this church regards all of humanity as the family, the way the church today regards, in the motto of the church, humankind, my family. But he said in those days, man, my brother. The message today was inspired by an African philosopher, African-born philosopher, Jacques Derrida. I don't know if you've heard of him. Derrida was a French philosopher, but he was born in Africa, and he always said that his philosophy was inspired by his experience in Africa. Because when he was 10 years old, the Nazi forces occupied France, and under their influence, Derrida was stripped of his French citizenship in Algeria where he was born because he was dark-skinned and looked a lot like a Jew. So the Nazi occupiers stripped him of his French citizenship and expelled him from school. So he said the shock of that identity crisis was the source of all his philosophical quests to try to challenge the idea that one racial group is superior to another. However, Derrida said in the essay on forgiveness that forgiveness is a language that comes to us in modern times from the Abrahamic traditions. And by Abrahamic traditions, he always says that he's referring to the religions of the book. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which still honors Abraham as Ibrahim. Derrida might be right in attributing this because these three traditions have teachings about mercy and forgiveness in them. Among the Jews, during their New Year, they have the Yom Kippur celebration during which you pray for atonement of your own wrongdoings to others in order for God to forgive you your own sins. But even in the Yom Kippur prayer, there are things that are unforgivable, which they will say, except for those things that are unforgivable, I forgive the rest. Africans don't seem to have something that they call unforgivable. In fact, the word unforgivable doesn't have a translation in my Igbo language. So, according